The now most famous photograph from this past week is an image of representatives from 5 of the most prominent American families, from First Lady Melania Trump to the Bushes, the Clintons, the Obamas, all flanking George Bush Sr. sitting in a wheelchair, and all wearing huge smiles on their faces. Of course, we know that their gathering was not one of joyous nature, and that the smiles do not indicate the true emotion that at least the Bushes were experiencing and others who were close with Barbara Bush as they converged together to pay their respects to the late First Lady, Barbara Bush. Their broad grin, though, took me by surprise, and it probably took many by surprise. The expression hardly seems appropriate. It's lacking reverence. It's lacking the sense of raw emotion that any of us experience at the funeral of a loved one or a friend. But presidents and first ladies are unlike the common man because they belong to a special guild. They belong to an exclusive club, one which has never been larger than 6 couples. And even with the world's greatest doctors and healthcare available to them, it likely will never be larger than that. And what this private group understands, more than anyone else in the world, that which unites them, that which they share in common despite their political differences and other vast differences, including age, is that they know what it is like to occupy the loneliest position in the world. And part of that loneliness is the product of never having a private moment in your life. That everything you ever do or say is on display. Every dinner, every golf outing, every joke, every smile, and every grimace, when you hold hands and when you choose not to hold hands. And even the tender moments, such as a funeral of a spouse, do not belong to the people in high office. They belong to the public. Certain people do not have the leisure to mourn, to grieve the way a normal human being is able to and expected to do. Our Parsha opens up with a similar, albeit much more tragic scene. Acharei mos shnei b'nei Aaron, after the deaths of the 2 sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, tragically taken away in the prime of their lives. One would think that Aaron should take a few days off from work. He should sit Shiva, rend his garment, grow out his beard. Even this week, Coach Greg Popovich of the San Antonio Spurs, who lost his wife, even he took off the last few games of the first round of the playoffs, and in effect the last games of his season, because he had a private mourning that he had to partake in. But when it comes to Aaron HaKohen, God commands Aaron to hold up appearances, not to mourn, not to do anything else that others are supposed to be doing when they're in Avelus. Instead, Aaron has to partake in the Miluim ceremony, the inauguration of the Mishkan, as we hear detailed in Parsha Shmini. Shlomo HaMelech is a similar situation. Shlomo HaMelech, on the day in which his temple is inaugurated, after which he and his father both spent many, many years planning and constructing. Shlomo HaMelech marries, unfortunately, the daughter of Paro, and his mother, Bathsheba, is fiercely critical of him for this. The Medrash describes that on the morning of the inauguration of the temple was the morning after the wedding night, and his new wife covered up the windows with pictures of stars so that Shlomo would mistakenly believe that it was still nighttime. And in storms Bathsheba into the room, and the Medrash describes that she hit Shlomo over the head with her shoe, told him to wake up and grow up, and it was time to celebrate the culmination of both his experiences as well as his father David's, as the new temple had been established. Because kings, presidents, Kohanim, none of them can be regular people. None of them can be human. And its most difficult hazard, which is associated with that kind of profession. And yet privately, there is a very real person on the inside. There is someone who needs to grieve, who needs to mourn. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Aaron, you are not a private citizen. Not now and never. You are the Rishus HaRabim. You belong to the public domain. And the truth is that this is a very hard concept for us regular people to relate to. But in reality, all of us have a component of our lives which is a Rishus Harabim, a public domain. There's a story about Shlomo Carlebach that he was once in the middle of a concert, and things were really going well, and the crowd was really into it, and he understood that when he conducted a concert and he told Torahs, people were inspired, people came from all over to be inspired by him and by his teachings. So in the middle, in the intermission, someone tapped him on the shoulder and said, Shlomo, your father was just nifter, your father passed away. Shlomo's father, of Naftali Carlebach, great descendant of an important rabbinic dynasty, Rav in Austria, had just passed away. And Shlomo, very close to his father, in that very moment understood that he had another half show to conduct. He had another crowd of people waiting to be inspired, to be uplifted. So he pulled himself together, he put on his guitar, and he went out, and he completed the concert. And two things happened. Number one, on the spot he composed one of his most stirring and painful melodies, Umacha Hashem Dima Malko Panim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will wipe away all the tears from every face. No doubt this was the product of his inner heart. But to the outside world, they couldn't see this. They had to see the public, joyous and musical and deeply spiritual individual they had come to see. And of course, when the concert was finished, he removed his guitar once more and collapsed and began to mourn and rend his garments. He understood something that an Aaron HaKohen understands, and that a president understands, and that each of us ultimately have to understand. That part of our lives is not private. Much of our lives is done in public. Not just because we're always communicating to the outside world, not because we're always in contact with others through social media, but because the most public part of us is our face, our punim. Our punim is the expression of the panim. And we're cautioned not to let those two territories bleed into one another. Of course, we have to be authentic people. If we feel pain, we should know how to express it at times. If we feel joy, we should express it. We have to be authentic. We have to be truthful. And people want that. At the same time, there's a hazard with expressing every emotion, every whim, every thought, anger, sadness, jealousy, you name it, on the outside. Because other people are watching. And whatever we experience on our face, that will temper those around us. That will create a certain image and a certain feeling in the people who surround us. And so we have no right to take that which is a public domain and turn it into a very private and very personal expression. It's very common nowadays to just wear every emotion on our sleeves. Whatever we feel, we say. But that kind of conduct can be hazardous. It can be too raw. It can be too painful. And there is a need sometimes to have a place, Rabbi Nachman called it hisbodedus, to go for a walk on your own, talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to open a private journal, and to write for yourself and to write for God. To have tefillah between you and Hashem, where your lips move but no words are audible. There is the private Jew and there is the private emotional side, which we're intended to express. Even HaKadosh Baruch Hu models this for us. The pasuk says, "Mistaram tibke nafshi." When I'm in pain, says God, I cry inside. Because woe is upon us, lo aleinu, if God were to allow his very heavy tears about all the painful things that he experiences to shed on the outside of that inner chamber. God teaches us, and those of us who are created b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God, to understand we must decompartmentalize. There are people in our lives who aren't ready to handle every emotion that we experience. It doesn't mean we should bottle it up all the time. We need an outlet. But not every time we see our children or our friends or even our spouse do we have to go up to them and express the pain that we are experiencing that very moment. Because there's another person on the other side of the Rishus Harabim. There's another person in the public domain. Kadosh Baruch Hu says in the holiest moments we have to remember that our face, our smile, our expression, and our eyes, which are the windows to our souls, express something that can affect many, many people around us. And we have to be very careful how and when we use our emotions.